June 6, 1944. As the first light of dawn broke over the shores of Normandy, tens of thousands of Allied soldiers stormed the beaches, knowing very well that many would never return home. It was the largest amphibious invasion in history, a turning point of World War II and a day that changed the course of history forever. D-Day is the story of courage, chaos, and sacrifice. Welcome to Bayeux, a town here in Normandy that miraculously survived the bombings of World War II. While Normandy in general got heavily bombed, Bayeux remains almost completely intact. It was also the very first city that got liberated one day after D-Day by the British. It is the perfect base for our journey here through Normandy. It is about 3 hours away from Paris by car, and you can also take a train to get here. But it is recommended to have a car here to explore the whole area. There are several beaches here in the area that you can visit, museums, and a lot of memorials. A car will make moving around so much easier. Bayeux in general is a beautiful and cute medieval town and therefore already worth a visit. Its 1,000 years old cathedral is absolutely stunning, and it is so much fun to explore its cute little cobble streets. But we are here to explore the history of D-Day. And before we get to the beaches, it is time to talk a little bit about what D-Day actually was and what happened on that day and why it has changed our world forever. On June 6, 1944, more than 160,000 troops landed here in Normandy. About 4,000 of them lost their lives on the day they landed. That day is also known as the D-Day. It was one of the biggest military operations of all times, and it was also known as the Operation Overlord. The troops came from England via boat or they parachuted out of airplanes. The mission was clear: to open up a second front here in the west of Europe and to set foothold here in France. The Allied troops wanted to push back the Germans. While the Red Army has already gained back a lot of territories on the Eastern Front, pushing back the Germans more and more in the east of Europe, the Allies wanted to support them and by that liberate Europe together with the Red Army. While the Red Army was already fighting on the Eastern Front, pushing back the Germans more and more by winning very important battles such as the one in Stalingrad, the Western Allies wanted to support the end of the war by opening up this front here in France, in the west of Europe. By doing so, they obviously accelerated the end of World War II a lot. And against all odds, the Allies here in Normandy were able to set foot in France, pushing back the Germans. But the price they had to pay was high. This year is Omaha Beach. June 6, 1944 was the day when the world changed. That day, thousands of Allied troops arrived here in Normandy under the hail of open machine gun fire. They were fighting to gain foothold here in Nazi-occupied France. It is only 1 out of 5 landing zones here in Normandy. The other beaches are called Utah, Gold, Sword, June. The US, Canada, Great Britain and many other nations took part in the so-called Operation Overlord. Here at Omaha Beach, more than 35,000 troops arrived on the so-called D-Day, June 6, 1944. These men were incredibly brave. They arrived over the English Channel here in France, and they found a coastline that was occupied by German Nazis. These Nazis were entrenched in the cliffs in the surrounding areas. Therefore, they had the great advantage that they had the overview of the beaches here. The arrival must have been a scene of unimaginable chaos and bravery. More than 2,400 US soldiers died here on Omaha Beach. For me, it is absolutely impossible to imagine how incredibly brave and how strong mentally you have to be one of those people that got out of the boats and jumped literally into open arm fire. A lot of these soldiers didn't even made it out of the water. But against all odds, by the end of the day, they secured the beach. There are a lot of monuments here at Omaha Beach. This one here behind me is called the Brave. The center part represents the rise of freedom, and it is flanked by the wings of hope and fraternity. There are several such viewpoints here in the area, viewpoints that were extremely important for the Germans because at these viewpoints they were able to see the whole beach area. In this case here, we can see over Omaha Beach that is behind me. While these viewpoints were a great advantage for the Germans, they were obviously a huge disadvantage and probably the biggest challenge for the Allied troops. They arrived here and obviously they were being seen by the Germans on those viewpoints. You can also see several bunkers here in the area, bunkers that we can enter. So the entrance is extremely tiny. There's not a lot of space here. And even inside of the bunker, you can see there's not that much space. There's a hole over there. And basically this is where they had their guns. There were up to 3 people in one of these bunkers. And as you can also notice, from in here you don't see that much. I mean, from in here you can't see the beach or anything. So how did they do this? They actually had pictures and some kind of paintings here around the wall. With those paintings they were able to kind of locate the area. They knew where they had to shoot, basically. Just a few kilometers away from Omaha Beach, there is Pointe du Hoc, which is this place here. From up here, you can see both beaches, Omaha Beach and Utah Beach, and therefore, strategically, this was a very important spot to take over. US Army Rangers climbed the 30 meters high walls under open gunfire. It took 2 days to take over this spot, and of the 225 US soldiers, only 90 survived. The goal of the US soldiers was to destroy the German artillery, which put this whole mission in danger. Here you can see craters from naval bombardments, as well as some shattered German bunkers. It is a haunting reminder of what has happened here. It took in total 2 days to get this place completely under American control. There are a lot of museums here in Normandy, and I chose the D-Day Experience Museum because I believe it simulates the Operation Overlord very well, so that you can get a better understanding of what it must have been like to be one of those soldiers that arrived here on D-Day. It is located in Saint-Côme-du-Mont, and it is a very interactive museum, which is why I chose it. You will learn more about what it felt like for those 18,000 men, more or less, that have arrived here in France on D-Day. While this museum starts off showing you army gear and original footage of that time, it quickly becomes very intense with a simulation of being one of the US soldiers that are about to get on a flight to Normandy.
Soldiers, I need your attention. If the weather forecast is confirmed, in 5 minutes, you will be in the air, heading for France.
After a short briefing of the mission by Colonel Wolverton, you will get on board of an original C-47 that has been transformed into a flight simulator. This plane participated in the parachute drop of American paratroopers over Cotentin on June 6, 1944. The flight starts smooth, but you will experience an intense crash landing in Normandy. The flight simulation was a super intense experience. It felt quite real as something like that can feel. You can just imagine like how crazy it must have been for those people to actually be in there, seeing other airplanes being bombed, dropping down the sky. This must have caused such an incredibly mental strength. I can't even imagine that. One of the most ingenious parts of the D-Day operation was what you can see here a little bit behind me in the water. This place is called Mulberry Harbor, and it is an artificial harbor which was very important to supply the Allied troops. Through this harbor, the Allied troops were able to bring equipment such as this one here, or further troops and all kinds of supplies the Allies needed to succeed here in Normandy. It was an artificial floating harbor. Within days, thousands of tons of equipment arrived here at Mulberry Harbor. This floating harbor was key for the whole operation. It ensured to keep the troops supplied throughout the whole invasion. There are many military cemeteries here in Normandy. This one here is in Lacombe, and it is the German military cemetery. Tens of thousands of soldiers have died here in Normandy on both sides. 21,000 Germans have been buried here. And we are now going to visit another cemetery that is extremely heartbreaking. Here in Colville-sur-Mer, you can find the American cemetery. There are more than 9,000 brave souls that didn't return home. They fought here in Normandy for a free Europe and for democracy. It is a very moving place to see all of these crosses here in the cemetery. It is especially moving when you have a look at their ages. A lot of those men died in their early 20s. It is not allowed anymore to go in front of the graves. That is only a reserved space for family members, for example, that want to leave their flowers here and remember the family members that passed away here in Normandy. There's also a museum here that is completely free to visit, and again, this place is a very moving one. Standing here in Normandy today, overlooking these almost peaceful waters, it is super hard to imagine the terror that happened here on D-Day. The price was high to get the freedom that we have here in Europe until today. It was a sacrifice that other nations paid for us, a sacrifice that we should never take for granted. Thanks to the Allied powers on the Eastern and Western Front, World War II ended less than 1 year after D-Day. Now I hope you enjoyed this tour through Normandy, and feel free to also leave a comment in the comment section below if you've been to Normandy already to tell me your own experience. It's time to subscribe to the channel to not miss out on further history videos and adventures around the world. I'll see you next week.